I'm not signing for her. The hospital social worker didn't sound surprised. Just tired. Ma'am, I have to note that she said, legally someone has to answer the question. Then write it down, I said. She answered hers when she locked me out at 15 pregnant still in high school. A pause. Then the soft click of keys. There may be follow-up from Adult Protective Services, she added. I expect there will be, I said. And I have paperwork of my own. I hung up before she could say anything else. That was the injustice, clean and permanent. My mother threw me out at 15 while I was pregnant, and now the system was calling me to take responsibility for her. Something buried was already moving. My son was asleep on the couch, one sock still on the other, lost somewhere between homework and exhaustion. The dishwasher hummed. The thermostat clicked. The house was quiet in the way you only get when the bills are paid. I stood there longer than necessary, phone in my hand. Refusal felt heavier than I thought it would. The next call came 20 minutes later. I didn't answer. Instead, my mind went where it always went when pressure arrived. Back to the kitchen, back to the table. I was 15, pregnant, sitting with my hands wrapped around a mug I wasn't drinking from. My mother stood by the sink, arms crossed, staring at the window like she was waiting for someone else to arrive and solve it. You can't stay here, she said. I waited for the rest, the explanation, the argument. Just for a few days, she added. I need space. I'm pregnant, I said. She didn't turn around. That's why. No yelling, no threats, just removal. I packed a backpack that night, clothes, a charger, my school counselor's card folded until the ink faded. When I came back 3 days later, the locks were changed. The school counselor didn't raise her voice when I told her. She nodded once and picked up the phone. Child Protective Services arrived the next afternoon. A woman with a neat bun and a clipboard asked questions without judgment. She wrote everything down. Your mother refuses re-entry, she said. Given your age and condition, we're placing you in a teen maternity home. Is that foster care? I asked. It's temporary, she said. Structured. Structured meant curfews, shared rooms, mandatory classes. It also meant a bed. That night, a staff member named Denise handed me clean sheets. You didn't do anything wrong, she said quietly. You're just early to something hard. I believed her because I needed to. My boyfriend came when it suited him. He sat on the front steps, scrolling, promising without specifics. I'll figure something out. Once I get more hours. We'll be a family. He missed the ultrasound, missed the intake meeting. When asked if he planned to be involved, he said yeah without looking up. At 7 months, he stopped answering altogether. I went into labor at 2 a.m. Denise drove me to the county hospital, her hand steady on the wheel mine, shaking in her grip. In the delivery room, a nurse read from a clipboard. Father's name, I said, unknown. She didn't blink. That was when I understood how fast you could disappear on paper. I left the hospital with a baby, a donated car seat, and instructions I didn't fully understand. I was still a minor, still supervised, still dependent on systems that worked because families didn't. Feeding schedules appeared on the fridge. Caseworkers talked about plans. I nodded and followed rules. I learned how to stretch formula, how to smile when volunteers asked questions they didn't need answered. My sister called once. You embarrassed Mom, she said. I needed help, I replied. You made choices, she said. Don't expect everyone to clean them up. She hung up before I could respond. Then I turned 18 quietly, a small cake, no candles. The program moved me into transitional housing, shared walls, subsidized childcare, a job board taped to the door. It wasn't freedom, but it was forward. Retail shifts, late nights, GED classes during nap times. There were days I felt almost normal. There were nights I cried in the bathroom so my son wouldn't hear. My mother never called. No card, no apology, no check-in through relatives. Her absence wasn't confusion. It was a decision. Years passed. I married later, not to escape but to stabilize. A steady man, careful with his words, kind without needing credit. We built a quiet life. Then the call came. Your sister has died. Your mother is alone. Can you come back? I said no. Paper arrived after that. A certified letter, hospital letterhead. Notices about next of kin responsibility, words like guardianship and temporary authority. I didn't panic. I read. Relatives called reminding me what daughters were supposed to do. I declined everything. Adult Protective Services stepped in. A conservator was assigned. The house was sold to cover care. That's when the anger started. Not because I refused care, because I refused guilt. 3 weeks later, a woman from the facility called again. There's a storage unit in your mother's name, she said. It's not listed in the estate inventory. I'm not responsible for her belongings, I said. I understand, she replied. But it contains documents, records. I closed my eyes. What kind of records? I asked. School correspondence, she said. Medical paperwork, legal forms. Something shifted then. Can I view them without taking possession? I asked. Yes, she said. With a witness. The storage unit was an hour away. Sun-bleached doors, a smell like dust and oil. Inside were boxes carefully labeled. Taxes, bills, school folders. My name was on several. One box was marked legal. I opened it. Inside were copies of school letters, counseling referrals, CPS notices I recognized immediately, and one typed document, voluntary relinquishment of temporary custody, signed by my mother, dated 2 weeks after she locked me out. She hadn't just thrown me out, she'd formalized it, quietly, deliberately. That piece of paper rewrote everything that came before it. That night, I made dinner while my son did homework at the table. He asked if I could check a math problem. I leaned over his notebook, corrected a number, slid the pencil back. Thanks, he said, already moving on. I washed my hands longer than necessary. Boundaries don't erase feeling. They contain it. The next morning, the conservator called. We may need to revisit certain assumptions, he said carefully. Documents have surfaced. I assumed as much, I replied. There could be implications, he added. I understand, I said. He cleared his throat. There will be a hearing, he said. Procedural. I thanked him and hung up. I knew what that meant. Once records exist, silence stops protecting people. And the next thing that arrives isn't a phone call. It's a notice with a date, a file number, and consequences already in motion. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, certified. Return receipt requested. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the counter, made coffee, packed my son's lunch, signed a permission slip for a field trip I'd nearly forgotten about. Ordinary things, the kind that remind you your life still belongs to you. Only after the house was quiet did I tear the envelope open. Inside was a notice from Adult Protective Services. Not a demand, not yet. Just confirmation. They had received my refusal. They were proceeding without family involvement. Further contact might be required for historical clarification. Clarification was the word they used when the past didn't line up cleanly. The phone rang that afternoon. A number I didn't recognize. This is APS, a woman said. We're following up regarding your mother. I've declined guardianship, I said. Yes, she replied. This isn't about that. I waited. We're trying to establish a timeline, she continued. Your sister handled most care informally. We need to understand when that began. I don't know, I said. I wasn't involved. That's what we're trying to verify, she said. Verify meant documents, names, contradictions. We may need background, she added, about your estrangement. I pictured the storage unit, the box marked legal. You'll find records, I said. They won't contradict each other. That night my aunt called. She didn't ask how I was. I hear you refused, she said. Yes. You could have talked to us first. You didn't talk to me when I was 15, I said. That's not the same, she replied quickly. Your mother was overwhelmed. I was pregnant, I said, and locked out. A pause. Well, she said your sister stepped up. She stepped in, I corrected. There's a difference. You sound bitter, she said. I sound accurate, I replied. She sighed. This is going to get complicated. It already is, I said. 2 days later, another letter arrived. This one from the conservator. He'd been assigned officially now. The language was neutral, almost apologetic. As part of due diligence, we may require statements from immediate family regarding prior care arrangements and historical separation. Statements were voluntary, but absence of them would be noted. I called my lawyer, not dramatic, not angry. I don't want to say anything that creates obligation, I told her. You won't, she said. But silence has a shape. Sometimes it gets filled in by other people. What do you recommend, I asked. Records, she said. Let paper speak. That weekend, I went back to the storage unit. The woman from the facility met me again. Same clipboard, same careful tone. I photographed everything this time. School attendance letters noting my absence after the lockout. A counselor's referral marked urgent. A CPS intake form with my mother's refusal documented in neat handwriting. Dates mattered, patterns mattered, people forgot, paper didn't. Halfway through the boxes, I found something I hadn't seen before. A manila envelope. Inside were copies of letters my mother had written but never sent. Drafts, to the school, to CPS, to my sister. They all said the same thing in different words. That I was unmanageable. That I had chosen this path. That she needed distance for her own safety. None of them mentioned pregnancy. None of them mentioned age. None of them asked for help. That was when the story shifted. She hadn't lost control. She'd curated the narrative. On the drive home, I stopped at a grocery store I didn't usually go to. I needed air. I stood in the cereal aisle longer than necessary, staring at boxes without seeing them. Quiet revenge isn't loud. It's the moment you realize you were never confused. You were lied about. A PS called again the following week. We've reviewed some documents, the woman said. There are inconsistencies. In whose account, I asked. She hesitated. In family recollections. Not in records, I said. No, she agreed. Not in records. Then came the hearing notice. Preliminary, administrative, attendance optional. I went anyway, not to speak, to be present. The room was small, beige walls, fluorescent lights. My aunt sat 2 rows ahead of me, my cousin beside her. They didn't turn around. The conservator summarized the situation. Elder care now state-managed. Assets limited. Historical abandonment documented. That last phrase landed harder than anything else. Documented. Outside the courtroom, my cousin finally spoke to me. You didn't have to dig this up, he said. I didn't dig, I replied. I opened what she left. You're making her look bad. She did that herself, I said. She's still your mother, he insisted. And I was still her child, I said. He didn't respond. That night, I tucked my son into bed. He asked if I could stay until he fell asleep. I sat on the edge of the mattress listening to his breathing slow. This was the part no one saw. The cost of stability. The reason boundaries existed. The next morning, an email arrived from the conservator. Subject line, additional findings. They had located a secondary document trail. School records, shelter intake notes, a CPS placement summary. Together they formed something close to a timeline. One that didn't need my voice. At the bottom of the email was a single sentence. These materials may affect how responsibility is assessed going forward. I closed the laptop. That was the moment I understood something important. This was no longer about whether I would take care of my mother. It was about whether anyone else would be allowed to pretend they had. And once that question entered the record, the next phase wouldn't be emotional. It would be procedural, slow, unavoidable, and much harder to escape. The next notice didn't come by mail. It came by email early in the morning, flagged time-sensitive. From the court. I read it standing at the kitchen counter while the coffee brewed. A status conference has been scheduled to determine conservatorship scope, reimbursement claims, and historical responsibility. Historical responsibility. That phrase stayed with me longer than the rest. My aunt called before noon. Her voice sounded different now, less sharp, careful. "They're asking questions," she said. "Who is?" I asked. "The court," she replied. "About your sister, about when she moved back in." I waited. "They want to know if she was pressured," my aunt added. "If anyone else should have stepped in." I thought of the unsigned letters in the storage unit, the drafts, the language. "No one pressured her," I said. "She volunteered." "That's not how it looks," my aunt said. "Then it's not accurate," I replied. Silence stretched. "This could get messy," she said finally. "It already was," I said. "You just didn't feel it yet." At work, I closed my office door and called my lawyer. "They're circling reimbursement," she said after I explained. "Caregiving expenses, lost wages, that kind of thing." "From whom?" I asked. "From the estate," she said. "But if the estate's insufficient, they'll look at causation." "Causation?" Meaning, I asked. "Meaning they'll ask whether earlier abandonment created later need," she said. I leaned back in my chair. "And if it did?" I asked. "Then responsibility gets reassigned," she said. The status conference was scheduled for a Friday morning. I went. My aunt sat stiffly near the front. My cousin whispered to her, then stopped when the clerk called the room to order. The judge didn't look up much. This wasn't about feelings, it was about files. The conservator spoke first. Calm, precise. Care was informal, he said. No contracts. No compensation agreements. My aunt's lawyer stood next. My client's daughter sacrificed years of income, he said. The family stepped in when others did not. The judge nodded once, then looked at the CPS summary. Others were removed, he said. Is that correct? Yes, the conservator replied. The subject declined care of a minor child. Placement occurred. Removed. Declined. The words landed quietly. Outside the courtroom, my aunt didn't approach me. Her lawyer did. "We'd like to talk," he said. "I'm represented," I replied. "Of course," he said. "Just wanted you to know this doesn't have to become adversarial." I looked at him. "It already is," I said. "You just filed paperwork." That afternoon, a new email arrived, this one from the conservator. Relatives have submitted preliminary reimbursement claims. Attached was a spreadsheet, years of numbers, care hours estimated, out-of-pocket expenses. At the bottom, a note, subject to court review pending causation assessment. They were building a case, just not against me. My sister's name appeared everywhere in the records. Doctor visits, medication pickups, home maintenance logs. She had done the work, quietly, consistently, and no one had asked why she'd been the only one. That question sat between the lines. 2 days later, APS called again. "We need clarification," the woman said. "Your sister made statements years ago. About what I asked. About you," she replied. "She indicated you'd left voluntarily." I closed my eyes. "That's not accurate," I said. "We know," she replied. "We're comparing versions. Comparing meant weighing credibility. Paper against memory." That night my husband asked if I was sleeping. "I'm resting," I said. He nodded. "Do you want this to hurt them?" he asked. "No," I said. "I want it to stop lying." He didn't say anything after that. Then another letter arrived the following week. This one was different. It informed all parties that reimbursement claims would be evaluated in light of documented abandonment and refusal of parental responsibility. I read that sentence twice, not because it surprised me, because it was finally written down. My cousin called that evening, not angry, not pleading. "You know this makes Mom look bad," he said. "She signed it," I replied. "She was scared," he said. "She was specific," I said. He sighed. "You don't have to do this. I'm not doing anything I said. I'm not interfering." "You're letting them judge," he said. "Yes," I replied. That was the difference. The next hearing was shorter. The judge spoke directly. "Caregiving was voluntary," he said. "No agreement existed. Claims are denied." My aunt's shoulders dropped. The spreadsheet vanished from the screen. But the judge wasn't finished. However he continued, the record reflects that need arose following documented parental refusal. That context matters. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. In the hallway, my aunt finally faced me. "You didn't have to let it go this far," she said. "I didn't stop it," I replied. "I stopped covering it." She looked at me for a long moment. "You always did that," she said. "Made things harder." "No," I said. "I made them visible." That night I sat at the table with the file open, not rereading, just acknowledging it existed. This was the cost. Not money, not inheritance, but reputation. And once the cost is assigned, it doesn't move again. The final email of the week came late. From the conservator. "Please be advised that the court may request additional documentation regarding early custodial decisions." I closed the laptop, because now the question wasn't whether I'd help my mother. It was whether the people who hadn't would be allowed to rewrite why. And the answer to that was already forming. Slowly. On paper. Where it would stay. The pressure didn't arrive all at once. It thinned first. Calls stopped. Messages dried up. Even my aunt went quiet. That silence wasn't peace. It was assessment. People were recalculating what still worked. The first move came disguised as coincidence. My cousin showed up outside my office building on a Wednesday afternoon, leaning against his car like he'd just happened to be in the neighborhood. "You got a minute?" he asked. "You drove 3 hours," I said. He smiled tightly. "Family does that." We walked a few steps. Not together. Just close enough to be heard. They're saying things he said, who I asked, people he replied, about how this looks. "I didn't write the record," I said. "I just stopped disputing it." He kicked at the pavement. "You know the house is gone," he said. "Most of it went to fees." "I know," I said. "Then what do you want?" he asked. I stopped walking. "I want distance," I said. He frowned. "That's cold." "No," I replied. "That's accurate." That night, an email arrived from a law firm I didn't recognize. Subject line: estate-related inquiry. No accusations, no demands. Just an invitation to clarify interests. I forwarded it to my lawyer without replying. Her response was short. "They're probing. Don't engage." For what I asked. To see if you'll claim anything she said. Claims create hooks. I understood immediately. If I wanted nothing, they had nothing to pull. The next update came from the conservator. "Your mother has been transferred to a long-term care facility. Hospital involvement concluded. No address, no visiting hours, just confirmation." I sat with that longer than I expected. Not relief. Permission. The calls resumed after that. Different relatives, different tones. One talked about forgiveness. Another about what people remember. A third warned me that my mother was confused and asking questions. I listened. I didn't argue. Silence had become leverage. The threat came quietly. My aunt called late. "I'm worried about your son," she said. I held the phone away from my ear for a second before bringing it back. "Why?" I asked. "All this stress," she said. Kids pick up on things. Courts notice instability. There it was. I didn't raise my voice. If you imply my child is unsafe again, I said I'll document it. She inhaled sharply. I'm just concerned, she said. I'm prepared, I replied. She didn't call again. 2 weeks later, the house went on the market. Not publicly, quietly. The conservator notified me by email. Asset liquidation pending to cover ongoing care. I stared at the line. That house had been the center of every argument. Now it was just an asset. My cousin texted once more. You could stop this if you wanted, I typed back. So could she. Then I blocked the number. At dinner that night, my husband asked if I was okay. Yes, I said, and I meant it, because the noise had peaked. What came next would be procedural. A month later, another letter arrived. This one was from the facility. They needed confirmation that no family member would assume future decision-making authority. I signed it, certified, return receipt. Refusal wasn't passive. It was recorded. On the drive home, I realized something I hadn't before. They weren't angry because I'd abandoned my mother. They were angry because I'd removed myself from negotiation, from guilt, from leverage. And when leverage disappears, families don't reconcile. They wait. The next email confirmed it. Subject line, upcoming review. The conservator was scheduling a reassessment. Nothing urgent, nothing emotional, just process. I closed the message without responding. Because now everything moved on paper. And paper doesn't care how persuasive someone sounds on the phone. It only cares what survives review. Which meant the story was no longer about pressure. It was about endurance. And the people who thought time would fix this were about to learn something uncomfortable. Time doesn't fix records. It exposes them. For a while, nothing happened. No calls, no emails, no relatives just checking in. The kind of quiet that feels earned. I almost trusted it. 3 months later, a voicemail appeared from a blocked number. This is Linda Morales, the woman said. I'm calling regarding your mother's personal effects. Please return my call. Personal effects. I let it sit until the next morning. When I called back, her tone was neutral. Professional. I work with the facility, she explained. We're inventorying remaining items. I'm not responsible for her belongings, I said. Yes, she replied. The conservator confirmed that. This is informational. I waited. There's a storage unit, she said, separate from the estate inventory. I know, I replied. A pause. There are documents in it, she continued. Records, correspondence. I felt the familiar tightening behind my ribs. Those have already been reviewed, I said. Yes, she replied, but not all of them. I met her at the unit 2 days later. Same row of metal doors. Same smell of dust and heat. She unlocked a smaller unit I hadn't seen before. Inside were fewer boxes, older, handwritten labels. One was marked with my sister's name. Another had mine. The third was unlabeled. I opened the box with my sister's name first. Medical appointment cards, prescription receipts, notes written in careful handwriting. She'd tracked everything. What surprised me wasn't the effort. It was the margin notes. Mom refused today. Asked again. Still no. Won't sign. My sister hadn't just cared. She'd documented resistance. That shifted something. The unlabeled box came last. Inside were envelopes, never mailed. Some addressed to schools, some to social workers, some to relatives, all written by my mother. Drafts. She'd practiced explanations, justifications, versions of events that sounded reasonable if you didn't know what was missing. Pregnancy was never mentioned. Age was never mentioned. Refusal was reframed as distance. I didn't need to read all of them. The pattern was clear. Linda watched me quietly. These weren't included before she said, Why now, I asked. The conservator requested a full sweep, she replied. After the reassessment. Paper called to paper. That night I folded laundry while my son watched television. Socks, t-shirts, ordinary things. He laughed at something I didn't see. I held on to that sound longer than necessary. This was the anchor. The reason the rest mattered. 2 days later, the conservator called. We've identified inconsistencies, he said. In whose accounts, I asked. Family statements, he replied. Regarding timelines, intent, and the records, I asked. They align, he said. I let that sit. There may be consequences, he added. For those who misrepresented. I'm not seeking them, I said. I know, he replied. But the court doesn't ignore patterns. The email arrived the following week. Subject line, Notice of Concern. It informed all parties that prior statements made to social services might be reviewed for accuracy. No accusations. Just notice. That was enough. My aunt called that night. Her voice wasn't sharp anymore. It was cautious. You didn't have to reopen things, she said. I didn't reopen, I replied. I stopped closing them. She sighed. You're making your sister look complicit, she said. No, I said. She wrote things down. That's the difference. Silence. She paid for it anyway, my aunt said quietly. Yes, I replied. She did. A week later, another hearing was scheduled. Not about care, about record integrity. That phrase appeared in the notice. Integrity. I attended, not to speak, to watch. The judge reviewed summaries, asked short questions, took notes. No one raised their voice. No one needed to. Afterward, my cousin avoided me entirely. My aunt left quickly. The conservator nodded once as he passed me in the hallway. That was enough. The formal notice came 3 days later. Certain family statements were deemed unreliable, no penalties, but no credibility either. Future claims would be evaluated accordingly. That was the cost. Not money, authority. That night, I placed the newly photographed documents into the file at home, not as ammunition, as completeness, because the truth wasn't dramatic, it was consistent. The next message arrived just before midnight, from an unfamiliar number. We didn't think it would go this far. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to negotiate. What surprised me wasn't the fallout. It was how little relief I felt. Not empty, just steady. Because this was never about winning. It was about ending a version of the story that only survived because no one challenged it, and now that version was gone. Which meant the next thing that surfaced wouldn't be denial. It would be strategy. And strategy, unlike emotion, doesn't rush. It waits. For timing, for weakness, for something to trade. Which meant whatever came next wouldn't ask for forgiveness. It would ask for something else entirely. The first person to adjust wasn't my aunt. It was the conservator. He called mid-afternoon, voice lower than before, careful in a way it hadn't been. I need to make you aware, he said, that additional inquiries have been raised. Inquiries about what I asked. About intent, he replied. And about whether earlier decisions were fully disclosed. I didn't interrupt. Some relatives are asking whether prior documents should have been shared sooner, he continued. With the court, with APS. Were they required to be? I asked. A pause. No, he said. But omission has context. Context meant consequences without accusations. That evening, my cousin unblocked himself. We need to talk. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, this doesn't have to get worse. I forwarded both messages to my lawyer. Her reply came back fast. Good, she wrote. They're feeling exposed. 2 days later, my aunt called. Her voice sounded different now. Not angry. Measured. You know your mother was scared, she said. She thought the state would take everything. She signed me away, I replied. She didn't file it, my aunt said quickly. It was just protection. For her, I said. Silence followed. That paper could cause problems, she said finally. It already did, I replied. The law firm emailed again. This time they asked for a meeting. My lawyer declined on my behalf. They're trying to assess damage, she told me, not repair it. What if I want them to know what I have, I asked. She paused. Then we decide when, she said, and how. That was the shift, from reaction to control. A week later, APS sent an email misaddressed. I was copied accidentally. They were requesting clarification from the conservator about delayed reporting in prior years. Dates, names, discrepancies. That email wasn't meant for me, but it didn't matter. Once written, it existed. My sister's name appeared again, not as a defendant, as a source. She'd given statements years ago supporting our mother's version, that I'd left, that I'd refused structure. Those words sat heavily now. She hadn't just stayed silent. She'd helped frame the silence. I didn't feel angry, just clear. She'd paid for that loyalty anyway. Years of caregiving. A life narrowed until there was nothing left but obligation. In the end, alignment hadn't protected her. The conservator called again at the end of the week. I should inform you, he said, that relatives have submitted revised claims. Revised how I asked. They're seeking reimbursement indirectly, he said, citing reliance on what I asked. On representations that you'd declined involvement voluntarily, he said. I let that sit. And the records, I asked. They contradict that, he said. There it was. That night my aunt called again. She didn't argue this time. She asked, "What do you want?" she said quietly. I thought about the file, the boxes, the letters never sent. Nothing I said. That's what changed. She exhaled slowly. You could end this, she said. I already did, I replied. The letter my lawyer sent the following Monday was brief. No threats, no demands. It attached copies of the documents. It requested that all future contact be routed through counsel. Nothing more, nothing less. After that, the noise stopped. No calls, no messages, no surprise visits. The kind of silence that comes when people realize the balance has shifted. Not because someone yelled, but because someone finally had proof. 2 weeks later, the court denied the revised claims. The reasoning was short. Caregiving was voluntary. Abandonment was documented. Reliance was unsupported. I read it once. That was enough. That night, my husband asked a question he hadn't before. Do you think they hate you now? He asked. I don't think about it, I said. Do you think your mother knows? He asked. I pictured the facility, the locked doors, the files. I think she always knew, I replied. What changed wasn't the outcome, it was the direction. For the first time, no one was asking me to carry anything. No guilt, no repair, no performance. The weight had shifted off my side of the table, and once leverage moves, it doesn't announce itself. It just leaves people staring at the space where it used to be, realizing too late that whatever comes next will be decided without them. The call from the facility came on a Thursday morning. Not the administrator, not a nurse, a chaplain. I'm calling on behalf of your mother, he said. His voice was gentle in the way professionals learn. She's been asking for you. I closed my office door. She's lucid, I asked. At times, he said. Enough to request contact. I've declined guardianship, I said. I understand, he replied. This wouldn't be legal, just personal. That was how the pressure returned, not as obligation, as redemption. I didn't answer right away. The chaplain waited, letting the silence do some of the work. She's aware of the house, he added, and of your sister. My hand tightened on the phone. What does she want? I asked. He exhaled softly. Closure. Of course she did. I asked for time. I didn't say no. That was enough for the message to travel. By the weekend, my phone was active again. You should go, one cousin texted. For yourself. Another wrote, you don't want this hanging over you. That was the reveal beneath the kindness. Forgiveness had become a service. Something I was expected to provide so everyone else could feel settled. My lawyer was direct. Any contact can be framed, she said. Especially now. Framed how I asked. As reconciliation, she replied. As implied consent, as softening. I pictured a staff member taking notes, a witness misremembering tone. I won't sign anything I said. That's not always the risk, she replied. 2 days later, a handwritten letter arrived. The return address was the facility. My mother's handwriting was shakier than I remembered. Inside was a single page. No apology, no explanation. Just 3 lines. I did what I thought I had to do. I hope someday you understand. I don't have much time. I read it twice. Even now, she couldn't say she was wrong. Only that she was justified. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away. I placed it in the file. Because patterns don't stop being patterns when someone gets sick. The conservator called the next morning. She's requested a meeting, he said. With you present. No legal changes. I've declined contact, I said. You've declined responsibility, he corrected. Contact is separate. That's not how it works, I replied. Silence. We're asking because it may stabilize her, he said. And destabilize me, I said. That's not our concern, he replied honestly. That was the clearest line I'd heard all week. That night, my husband said something he hadn't said before. You don't owe her anything, he said, but you might owe yourself certainty. I thought about that longer than I expected. Then I nodded. I agreed to 1 visit. 1. No paperwork, no recording devices, staff present but distant. The facility scheduled it carefully. Tuesday morning, limited time, controlled. The building smelled like disinfectant and overcooked vegetables. Locked doors, soft voices, people waiting for time to pass. They led me to a small room with 2 chairs and a window that didn't open. She was already there, smaller than I remembered, more fragile. She looked up when I entered. You came, she said. I didn't stay, I replied. She nodded like she'd expected that. I never wanted to hurt you, she said. I waited. You left me, I said. She frowned slightly. I protected myself. The words landed exactly where I expected them to. I was 15, I said. You were reckless, she replied. Not angry, just certain. I was pregnant. You made choices. There it was, the same sentence my sister had used. I stood up. This is why I didn't come, I said. Wait, she said quickly. I need you to hear something. I hesitated. I kept the papers, she said. In case I needed them. I know, I said. Her eyes widened. How, she asked. You showed me, I replied. By keeping them. Her mouth opened, closed. You don't understand what it was like, she said. I understand exactly, I replied. For me. I left before the allotted time ended. In the hallway, a nurse avoided my eyes. In the parking lot, my hands shook. Not with doubt. With anger I'd set down years ago. That night my aunt called. She's devastated, she said. She didn't expect you to be so cold. I wasn't cold, I replied. I was accurate. You don't have to punish her, she said. I'm not, I replied. I stopped protecting her from consequences. Silence. Then her voice lowered. She's asking about her will. That was the shift. The visit hadn't been about closure. It had been a test. To see if guilt still worked. If I would soften. If pressure could still move me. It couldn't. And now that she knew that whatever came next wouldn't be emotional, it would be deliberate. Designed to last longer than she would, which meant the final conflict wasn't about forgiveness. It was about what she would try to leave behind. The call from the conservator came 3 days after the visit. Not urgent, not dramatic, measured. "There's been a development," he said. "Your mother has requested a revision to her estate plan." I leaned back in my chair. "She doesn't have much left," I said. "That's correct," he replied. "But intent still matters. That word again. Intent." He explained without flourish. "A late-stage will. Simple, specific. She's requesting that you be explicitly excluded," he said. I almost laughed. "From what I asked. From any remaining personal property," he said. "And from acknowledgement beyond legal recognition." Acknowledgement. She wanted the record to say she had erased me on purpose. "I don't want anything I said," I know he replied. "But she does. That was the point. This wasn't about money. It was about authorship." The draft arrived by email later that day. 2 pages. My name appeared once. "I acknowledge my daughter, but make no provision." No explanation, no apology, just finality. That was the reveal. She hadn't softened. She'd refined. My lawyer reviewed it quickly. "She's allowed to do this," she said. "But it doesn't change prior records." "Is there risk?" I asked. "Only if you respond emotionally," she replied. I didn't. I signed acknowledgement of receipt. Not consent. Receipt. The family reacted immediately. My cousin texted. "She's finally doing what she should have done years ago." My aunt called. "She's at peace now," she said. "You should be relieved." I pictured the draft, the deliberate language. "She's not at peace," I said. "She's still controlling the ending." 2 days later, another letter arrived. Handwritten. "No return address beyond the facility. I hope this gives you the freedom you wanted." Freedom. From what? From being documented. From being contradicted. From accountability. The nurse called the following week. "She's declining," she said. "Comfort care has been initiated." I thanked her. There was nothing else to say. The facility stopped calling after that. No updates, no requests, just silence. The kind that means time has become predictable. My aunt called once more. "She doesn't have long," she said. "If there's anything you want to say, I've said everything," I replied. "She's afraid," my aunt whispered. "Of what I asked." "She's afraid you'll tell people," she said. There it was. Not death. Legacy. The notice arrived early one morning. My mother had died. No dramatic language, no condolences beyond formality. Arrangements handled. Estate to be closed. I sat at the kitchen table long after the email closed, waiting for something to happen inside me. It didn't. That afternoon I pulled the file out. CPS records, shelter intake forms, school letters, the relinquishment. I lined them up neatly, not to relive them, to remember something important. She'd tried to write the ending, but she hadn't controlled the archive. The final hearing was scheduled quietly. No family notifications beyond required parties. No requests for attendance. I went anyway. The judge reviewed the file. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. "Estate closed," he said. No further action. A gavel tap. That was it. Outside the courtroom, the conservator stopped me. "For what it's worth," he said, "the record remains intact," meaning I asked. "Nothing was sealed," he replied. "Nothing was amended." I nodded. That mattered. The family didn't hold a funeral. There was a small service arranged by the facility. No invitation reached me. I didn't ask why. Weeks later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside were photographs, old ones. My sister as a child. My mother younger than I'd known her. One of me maybe 10 years old standing in the kitchen. No note. Just proof that someone had remembered I existed. I didn't keep them out, but I didn't discard them either. I placed them in the file, because they belonged with the rest of the record. Inheritance isn't always money. Sometimes it's narrative, sometimes it's what survives scrutiny. And the thing my mother feared most being contradicted had already happened. Quietly. On paper. Where it would stay. Which meant the last thing left to decide wasn't who got what, but who would be believed once nothing else could change. The final hearing took less than 20 minutes. No arguments, no raised voices, no one trying to be heard. Just a clerk reading summaries into the record and a judge nodding along. Estate closed, no outstanding claims, no next of kin assuming responsibility. I wasn't required to attend. I went anyway. Not to speak, to listen. Because stories like this don't end when someone dies. They end when the record stops changing. Afterward, the conservator caught up to me in the hallway. For what it's worth, he said quietly, the file will remain complete. Complete how I asked. All supporting documents remain attached, he said. CPS reports, custody relinquishment, correspondence. Nothing sealed, I asked. Nothing he confirmed. I nodded once. That was enough. There was no funeral I was invited to. A small graveside service happened somewhere I didn't attend. I heard about it later through someone who assumed I'd want to know. I didn't correct them. A month later, a package arrived. Plain cardboard. No return address. Inside were more photographs. Duplicates, mostly. My sister in high school. My mother holding a birthday cake for someone else. One picture of me cropped strangely like I'd almost been removed. No note, no explanation. I didn't feel angry, just confirmed. Life filled the space quickly. Work deadlines, school drop-offs, dinners made without thinking. My son grew taller, louder, more confident. One night while I was folding laundry, he asked a simple question. Why don't we ever visit your mom? I kept folding. We weren't safe together, I said. He nodded like that made sense. Because it did. 6 months later, my lawyer called. I wanted you to hear this from me, she said. A relative attempted to file a complaint about what I asked. Influence, she replied. They claimed you interfered with proceedings. And I asked. It was dismissed, she said. The documentation contradicted it. I thanked her. Records again. Always records. After that, the contact stopped completely. No calls, no messages, no updates delivered secondhand. The silence this time wasn't strategic. It was exhausted. One evening, my husband asked something he'd never asked before. If things had been different, he said, "Do you think you would have forgiven her?" I thought about it. Not emotionally, practically. I don't know, I said. But forgiveness was never what she wanted. What did she want? He asked. To be right, I said. Sometimes I wondered how the story would be told without me in it. A mother who struggled, a daughter who disappeared, a family who tried. That version existed. It always would. But it wasn't the one that survived review. A year after her death, I requested one final certified copy of the complete file. Not because I needed it, because I wanted it archived somewhere neutral. Somewhere it couldn't be lost. The clerk who processed the request glanced at the contents. People usually want these destroyed, she said. I know, I replied. At home, I placed the file in a locked cabinet. Not as leverage, not as insurance, as a boundary. A reminder that survival doesn't always look generous. Sometimes it looks precise. I never told my son the details, only the lesson. That love and obligation aren't the same thing. That systems exist because families fail. That you don't owe silence to people who rewrote your life. He accepted that easily. Children usually do. There are nights when I still think about her. Not with anger, with clarity. I wonder if she believed excluding me in writing meant control, if she thought history would soften once she was gone. She was wrong about that. Because what remained wasn't bitterness, it was documentation. And documentation doesn't argue. It doesn't forgive. It doesn't forget. It just stays. People like loud endings, reconciliations, punishments, tears. This story had none of that. It had records, decisions, consequences that landed slowly and stayed put. When I think back to the moment I said no to the hospital, to my family, to the version of myself that always absorbed impact, I don't feel brave. I feel finished. Finished carrying what was never mine. Finished protecting stories that collapsed under light. Finished believing survival required silence. Because in the end, choosing yourself isn't revenge. It's accuracy. And accuracy, once recorded, is the only thing that actually lasts.